Monday, April 18, 2022 City Council meeting. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Certainly. Can we start with a motion to make Alderman Morris Mayor Pro Tem for the evening?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Very good.
Glad we did that?
That was good. That's a good start. We can go on now.
Alderman Morris.
Here,
Alderman Karas.
Here.
Alderman Rummel.
Here.
Alderman Notes.
Here.
Alderman Preschlack.
Here.
Alderman Gushgarian.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Alderman Weber.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
very good. We're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance first, so. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everybody. Just a note that the mayor is under the weather, and this afternoon, the city manager became under the weather. So Assistant Manager Mike Strong's filling in for our city manager, and I'm filling in for the mayor. So the first item is an important resolution of appreciation for someone who has, I think, performed everything there is to do in this department, water and sewers. So this is a resolution of appreciation for Fred Heff. And I'm going to read this. There's a lot to hear here. And then we'll make a motion to approve that, and then we'll take up some photographs. So whereas Fred Heff has been a dedicated employee of the City of Lake Forest since March 1985 as a maintenance worker with the Water and Sewer Department and as assistant supervisor for this past year. And whereas Fred Heff has been relied upon for all facets of the department for his expertise as the primary backhoe operator to repair main breaks, install water and sewer lines, repair storm catchment basins, and called upon to aid other operating departments and sections for these kinds of projects. Whereas Fred Heff has used his 40 years of experience and knowledge of the water and sewer field to educate and train his coworkers with operating equipment, emergency response during flooding and main break events, utility locates, fire hydrant maintenance, storm and sanitary sewer maintenance. And whereas Fred Heff provided many devoted years and long hours as the mainline snowplow driver and equipment operator for hauling snow. Whereas Fred Heff has been a dependable and dedicated employee who's taken great pride in the services he's provided, the quality of work he's performed, and the care of the equipment he has operated. Whereas Fred has honorably retired from the city on March 11, 2022, and whereas Fred Heff served in the following positions during his dedicated career: Maintenance Worker 2 and Water and Sewer Assistant Supervisor. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lake Forest that the council, on behalf of the administration and all the residents of the community who appreciate everything you've done, we hereby express our appreciation and gratitude to Fred Heff for a public service faithfully performed, and be it further resolved that this resolution be appropriately inscribed and conveyed to Fred with a copy to be included in the official minutes of the April 18th, 2022 meeting of the City Council. So, thank you very much. I'd like a motion to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, I've got a certificate I'd like to show you, and to get a picture of you with the certificate. And you can put on your wall when you have a chance. Come on up. There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Thank you. We really appreciate what you've done. Thank you. And thank your family, because I'm sure you haven't been there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for the service.
Congratulations.
We're going to continue on. You don't have to sit through the whole meeting.
It's time for
Thanks.
sweets.
Thanks. Yeah, there you go.
Have a nice celebration.
The next item is another resolution of appreciation for one of our most important assets in Lake Forest. And this is for Joanna Rolick, who is the president of the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce. Whereas Joanna Rolick, a former Lake Bluff resident and current executive director of the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce, is celebrating her 25th business anniversary. And whereas Joanna Rolick has steadfastly served our community for over 25 years. And whereas Joanna Rolick has brought the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce through the birth of the internet, Google, Amazon, and has tirelessly advocated for all local businesses and small business owners on the North Shore. Whereas Joanna Rolick has devoted the past 25 years of her career representing and serving over 500 Lake Forest, Lake Bluff Chamber of Commerce members and one of the largest chambers on the North Shore. And whereas Joanna Rolick has sought to develop and enrich the next generation of business owners and entrepreneurs through her contributions of instruction, mentorship to students of Lake Forest High School, Lake Forest College, and other young people in our community. Whereas Joanna Rolick has fostered innovation, friendships, and a legacy of compassion and service to our community, now therefore it be resolved by the City Council of the City of Lake Forest that the council, on behalf of the administration and residents of the community, hereby expresses its deep appreciation and gratitude to Joanna Rolick. Be it further resolved that this resolution be appropriately inscribed and conveyed to Joanna Rolick with a copy to be included in the official minutes of the April 18, 2022 meeting of the Lake Forest City Council. So I'd like a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So I would like to bring this up, and we're going to take a picture. Come on up, and then... Joanna to make a few comments.
And I never say no.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Thank you. Tip it up. Step up to the microphone.
Acting Mayor, may I make a question or a point? Because Joanna has worked so well with individuals on the council, a pleasure to work with. I'm wondering if we could have a council picture here with her in the front.
Biddy, why don't you
That's a
ask
nice idea.
me to come back?
I don't want her to forget us.
All right, well, stand up and go over here. And see how this place is done. So, Bill, our photographer, who's now, well, you deserve it.
I think we have to squish together, don't
The
we?
reason we don't have a lot of empty stores in there.
So don't sit down fast.
Yeah, watch out, don't trip on the cane.
Good idea.
Now, again, wonderful person, and appreciate everything she's done.
Let's put this right here. There we go.
Can you move in a little bit? That. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Since you're back.
Really, all I want to say is a really big thank you. That's number one. Number two, I couldn't do this without all of you, all of your predecessors for the past 25 years, and many of the people who are in the audience today. And so I do appreciate this because I'll tell you what, looking at Eileen Luby and knowing that you're one of the businesses, Eileen, and Alderman Bushman, and the fact that we've worked on things in the west side of town, and all of you, Melanie, all of you, as we've worked at things, Jennifer, my goodness. You know, I look at that and I think it's all about collaboration, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's all about just connecting everyone, and we have such a wonderful array of businesses. It's been a blessing over the past 25 years. Somebody said it was a quarter of a century, and I thought, no, that's that sounds so awful and old. And I was barely out of high school when I started. So, but at any rate, I do want to thank you. This is cherished. It means so much to me. And onward, we continue. We continue with this evolution that and this journey that we're on together. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's a terrific reward. The next item on our agenda will drop down to the approval of an Arbor Day proclamation. So again, I need to read this for everybody's benefit. The proclamation reads, whereas Arbor Day will be officially observed in the state of Illinois on Friday, April 29th, 2022, by proclamation of the governor and the planting of trees on Arbor Day. It's a traditional activity throughout the state in the city of Lake Forest. And whereas Lake Forest with its environment of natural areas is particularly dedicated to the observance of this day and has consistently throughout its history enacted ordinances to preserve its trees and other natural assets. And whereas citizens groups, garden clubs, and private and public institutions have actively supported preservation efforts and the renewal of natural areas through tree planting and landscape projects. And whereas the celebration of Arbor Day 2022 in Lake Forest will include the distribution of tree seedlings to the public at designated locations, and Arbor Day 2022 will be celebrated throughout the day in programs at schools and other locations, and at Norcroft Park, located at 1365 South Ridge Road, on Friday, April 29th at 10 a.m., where the city's official Arbor Day tree, one oak tree, will be planted. And I get the rest of the, where did they go? Well, I had,
The second page, she has it.
oh, do you have it over there? I only got one page. Thanks. All right, thanks. All right, and whereas trees in the city, wherever they are planted, increase property values, enhance our businesses and residential areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy to gladden the hearts and promote the environmental well-being of present and future generations. And whereas the city of Lake Forest has been recognized as Tree City USA for 42 consecutive years by the National Arbor Day Foundation. Now therefore, I, speaking for the Mayor George Pantaleone, the City of Lake Forest, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 29th, 2022 is Arbor Day in the City of Lake Forest. And I, as mayor, urge all citizens to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, to support our city's forestry program, to plant trees on this day, and to join in the celebration of ceremonies. In witness thereof, I have set my hand and have had the seal of City of Lake Forest affixed to the 29th day of April 2022 proclamation. And I think we need a voice vote for this. Motion to approve the proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Chad, if I may just mention one thing, because just this week on Lake Forest Love, the city's blog, there's a wonderful post called New City Map Helps Residents Identify Tree Species. So I just want to encourage everybody, if you haven't, to go on to that inventory. There are about 30,000 trees that appear on that inventory, and those are species that have been identified across the city of Lake Forest. It's quite a remarkable interactive map, so if you haven't done that already, it's pretty cool.
Thank you. Any other comments about Arbor Day? If not, we'll move on to the 2022-2023 board and commission appointments and reappointments. We have one appointment, Mark Gorman, appointing to the Parks and Recreation Board. I'd like a motion to approve the appointment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I think we need a roll call. Just a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, then we move on to the next item. Get my directions set. For comments by the city manager. In this case will be Mike Strong.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The city council may recall last year, the city of Lake Forest joined 5 other communities in restarting its municipal aggregation program. The council approved a power supply agreement with MC Squared Energy Services, which was a 3-year contract that offered a price match guarantee with a ComEd supply rate. In exchange, that offers the city an opportunity to earn up to $90,000 a year in a civic contribution grant that can be used towards sustainability initiatives or other priorities of the council. As part of the terms of that contract, they are allowed to review the subscriber list each year and submit notifications throughout the community based on changes within energy consumption, based on new homes being purchased or sold. So there's a notification that's going to be prepared. I've asked management analyst Layla Warner just to provide a brief update to the council on the notification that's going to be going out in the next couple weeks.
Great. Thank you, Assistant City Manager Strong, and thank you, members of the City Council, for having me here tonight to provide this update. So as what was already kind of explained, I'm just going to go into a brief timeline of what the municipal aggregation program, what it looked like when it was at the City Council level. So back in April 2021, this is when this came to the council, and it was approved to work with the contracted vendor MC Squared Services. And so then from there, we kind of went through all of our different ways that we communicated with residents. And then in August of 2021 was when the initial mailing went out to either automatically enroll residents in the program, or to get other potential people to enroll, or to notify people if they weren't eligible to be in the program. So then after that, in October of 2021, that was when that change actually went over for the majority of business owners as well as residents. And then kind of as Assistant Manager Strong just stated, the MC Squared will reevaluate the list and just make sure that everyone who was enrolled can remain in the program, or to let people know if they're moving back to just the regular ComEd services. So I do have an example of what the 2 mailings that are going to be going out are going to look like. And I know you guys probably can't read those, they're pretty small, but I'd be happy to share the final proofs of what those letters will look like. And this mailing is significantly smaller than the previous one. It's only going out to 10% of residents and businesses. And it's only 2 different types of mailings that are going out versus the 5 or 6 that went out on the previous mailing. So the first notice that will be going out is the opt-out notice, and that's the one that automatically enrolls residents in the program. And if they would like to not be a member of the program, they can reach out to MC Squared to not be enrolled. And then the other letter that's going out is going to be the return to ComEd services. So this one would be going to residents that may be enrolled, and the bulk energy that was purchased by MC Squared, it's not meeting that delta between how much it costs to actually supply it to them and how much they're paying on their energy bill. Because our agreement with MC Squared was that we would get, this grant funding up to $90,000. And if they are unable to provide that, it's due to the fact that someone was enrolled and it was costing too much to provide the energy to their home or business. So those are the 2 mailings that are going to be sent out. We do plan on putting notification in our e-news this week, because it will be dropping this week and next week into mailboxes, as well as a news article on our website just to notify residents that it will be dropping, and just kind of to get ahead of maybe any potential questions that we could have from people. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
I want to confirm, this is a resident has to opt out, so they're automatically enrolled.
Correct. So if they get the opt-out notice, it's that they were already enrolled in the program, and
Had to
if
proactively do that.
correct. So they would have to reach out to MC Squared, and the contact information is on the letter, as well as they could also reach out to us, and we could reach out to MC Squared as well, or connect them with any of our contacts with the company.
Thank you.
Alderman Rummel?
So how many residents are enrolled in this currently, do we think?
I think it's about I think it's 3%. Is that correct? I think it's about 3% of residents are currently enrolled.
Just under, but we can get a more specific number from the company.
So 3% of households
Correct. Yeah.
is what we're talking. So
And typical, just based on what we've seen in the area, typical deployment is around 2 to 4%. So we're right within the average of what we'd see in an opt-out type program.
Alderman Bushman?
and those are businesses as well, correct?
So yeah, so it's just any person who could be eligible, whether it's a business or a residential address in the program.
And do we know how much money we have coming? I mean, are we tracking all right thus far?
So it's roughly going to be $90,000. That was the agreed upon amount in the contract. But we don't know for sure what that's going to look like, and we'll have, more final numbers probably in early fall this year.
Good. Alderman Bushman?
I was going to comment that periodically at my residence, we get a mailing about signing up for some solar program, and they claim to have all these savings, and I must admit I don't pay a lot of attention to it, so I don't even know who it's from. But if a person signed up for a solar program, does that disqualify them from this?
So yes, they wouldn't be eligible to participate in this program. However, if they would prefer to be in electric aggregation, they would need to contact, whoever they're currently in a contract with Community Solar, and then they could engage in this.
Switch out.
Yeah.
Very good. Alderman Rummel?
I think this might be a good opportunity, though, to talk about the other program and distinguish it from this one, because it's rather confusing, because MC Squared is doing both programs.
Correct.
So, for example, I as an individual have enrolled with MC Squared to get some of my electric from a solar
Right.
field, and it saves me money every month. But that's a separate program. But to your question, Alderman Bushman, MC Squared is like I don't know what the term is for it, but they are the ones that is working with the city, even as an individual, if you want to sign up. Do you want to elaborate further, Assistant Manager? Either one of you.
Yeah, MC Square is the program administrator for the two programs, which are independent. Now, it's important to note that community solar subscribers won't receive any notifications because they're technically not enrolled in the program, but it is a good distinction to make. In fact, I believe the upcoming dialogue is also going to be talking about that opportunity for direct savings up to 20% on those supply bills if they're interested in that. But I hope that helps clarify the.
Well, there was a waiting list for a while, so you could sign up and be on a waiting list. But I think the waiting list is opened up now again, so there might be additional opportunities. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there could be opportunity to engage in community solar, but like you had mentioned, Alderman Rummel, this is separate from aggregation. It's just the same company that has both options available.
Right, but I certainly would encourage residents who haven't to take a look at signing up with MC Squared for your personal home, and the city realizes the savings from this aggregation program. You can individually realize the savings from the individual solar subscription program.
As I recall, the community solar program was first offered to the city, and then we came up with the aggregation program. So, yeah, if there is a confusion out there, I think it's something that would be helpful to recognize and make sure that people understand the difference and the distinction. And as Alderman Rummel says, the availability to the extent it is available for those choices.
Yeah.
Maybe at a future meeting, you come back with a little bit more in-depth discussion of the two programs and how we're involved and how communities are participating.
Happy to do so.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Because there is confusion out there. I get questions all the time about it. So.
And we do have a web page on our website dedicated to this program, and we do have, kind of distinguishing the difference between the two, because again, it is, understanding the difference is important.
Is that explained on the website, did you say?
Yeah, so we do have a web page that's already dedicated to the aggregation program. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we are planning on doing a news article. So just kind of distinguishing the difference there as well.
Very good. Further questions? All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you, Sid.
No further comments this evening.
Okay, well, then we'll move on to the opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. I don't think we have a lot of residents in the audience today, so I'm guessing there aren't any questions. So, all right, we'll move on. We're coming to committee reports, and as the chairman of the Finance Committee, I'm going to introduce Director Holub regarding the approval of the comprehensive fiscal plan for fiscal year 2023. And I have a couple of comments about this. The City Council will be asked to approve the fiscal year 2023 comprehensive fiscal plan this evening. The presentation and action to be taken brings to a close a 7-month process by the city staff and city council. The FY23 comprehensive fiscal plan is more than an annual budget. It includes the city council fiscal policy, our 5-year capital improvement program, our long-term financial forecasting, and more to demonstrate the city council allocation of taxpayer resources that are entrusted to us, the basis of the budget. Fortunately, the city has weathered the COVID-19 pandemic very well, as we've talked about in prior sessions. As revenues have returned to normal, the city council's conservative projections for the current fiscal year have yielded revenue available for the needed programs we have, but previously unfunded capital projects. Approximately $20 million in capital projects are anticipated in the coming year, which is normally maybe $10 million. So it's a big increase for the benefit of the community. The FY23 budget projects revenues of $99.5 million across all funds and expenses of $97.7 million. It complies with the City Council fiscal policy in all respects and maintains the long-standing tradition of reserve funds to withstand any future unanticipated events, such as nature's impact on our beach and bluff, effects of the state's fiscal crisis, or the global pandemic. The city's high level of services are maintained in FY23 without any significant fee increases. And all fees currently billed on the quarterly utility bill remain at the fiscal year 22 levels for an additional year. It is important to note that the Lake Forest taxpayers continue to enjoy the lowest property tax of any community in Lake County. I would like to recognize the budget process involves countless hours of work by the city staff, all of you, and the operating departments, as well as the director and Diane Hall, who have brought this to our attention tonight. Your commitment is appreciated, and we want to recognize it. I will now ask Director Holub to provide a summary of the comprehensive plan and open up for questions from any of the members. Director Holub.
Thank you.
Dr. Holub, we're just getting some feedback that there is some feedback if you're too close to the microphone. So
Okay.
that probably is better.
You just wave if I get too quiet, okay? Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Morris, for your introductory comments. It always feels really good to get to this point. As you mentioned, this is a 7-month process we embark on every year, and it's also noteworthy the extent of involvement on the city staff. You have staff in every operating department, every division, every nook and cranny that is somehow involved in the budget process, and it's important to recognize that effort. And thank you for recognizing Assistant Finance Director Diane Hall as well. She's tremendous support to me through the process, but also to all the operating departments in answering questions and providing them guidance over the 7-month process. But thank you mostly as a City Council Finance Committee for your dedication and commitment and involvement throughout the process in providing us direction and guidance in getting to this final comprehensive fiscal plan document for your adoption today. As we discussed in the preceding Finance Committee meeting, the comprehensive fiscal plan document's been available on the website for a week. We posted that on April 11th and put news blasts out to ensure that residents knew it was available, had an opportunity to review that before you take action this evening. And also, as mentioned, since your March 14th budget workshop, only minor revisions have been made to numbers. We've gone back and refreshed the fiscal year 22 year-end estimates to have really current data on reserves going into fiscal year 23. And then we've also made the allocation of compensation adjustments to all the operating department budgets. So you see those reflected now within the department rather than in the non-departmental budget. So I just have a brief summary. As Mayor Pro Tem Morris indicated, the comprehensive fiscal plan document is a lot more than the budget. It encompasses a cyclical aspect of our financial adherence throughout the year, which starts with long-term planning through different processes like the strategic plan and the fiscal policy adopted by the Finance Committee each October. It moves into goals, both organizational and departmental, for the coming fiscal year. We look at service levels. We spend a lot of time on personnel, salary, and benefit determinations because they're such a significant part of the budget, especially the general fund. And we look at personnel allocations, and then we get into the detail of forecasting the revenues and expenses for the annual budget. This diagram just shows the process through the 7 months, what actions are taken by the City Council and the steps taken by the staff in getting to this point. And, you know, really much of the work is done at the 2 budget workshops, the capital budget workshop in November, which also covers the property tax levy and fee schedule, and then the operating budget workshop held in March. A couple years ago, we made a significant enhancement, I think, in the comprehensive fiscal plan in linking it with the strategic plan. So we integrated the 6 components of the 5-year strategic plan of the city using various icons for the different focus areas of the strategic plan. And so throughout the budget document, you see those icons visually so that you're alerted immediately to specific aspects that relate directly to the strategic plan areas. The general fund accounts for about 40% of the total city budget. So we spend a lot of time on the general fund. Going into fiscal year 23, it's important for us to have an idea of where we think we're going to end up for fiscal year 22, the current fiscal year, which ends in 12 days. And so I'm very pleased to report that the city has performed extremely well in fiscal year 22. Last year, when you approved the fiscal year 22 comprehensive fiscal plan, there were a lot of unknowns about the COVID-19 pandemic and how that would continue to affect the city's financial picture. And so the city opted to take very conservative assumptions in developing the fiscal year 22 budget and fiscal plan. And we have outperformed in the general fund, both on the revenue and expense side, which has allowed for additional transfers, noted here about $3.45 million that could be transferred and allocated to capital improvements and other funding needs outside the general fund, which assisted in us reaching that likely record level of capital improvements slated for fiscal year 23. Highlighted here on this slide is just some of the more significant variances. On the revenue side, you can see we're forecasting general fund revenue to come in about $3.5 million better than budget. You can see the significant areas of that were income tax and building permits, which combined for about $1.9 million, outperforming the budget. Income tax last year was a conversation about individual income taxes and enhanced unemployment compensation that through the pandemic was really inflating income tax in the state of Illinois that then comes back to the city on a per capita basis. In fiscal year 22, the story has been more on the corporate income tax side, where corporate income tax receipts by the state have far outpaced even pre-COVID levels. And so we've shared in the benefit of that with revenues coming in well over our budget projection. And then you can see other positive variances in local use tax, sales tax, COVID-19 reimbursement. Again, kudos to Diane Hall. She's constantly watching FEMA and the eligible requirements for expenses that we can have reimbursed through reimbursement request to FEMA related to COVID-19 that has generated about $200,000 in unbudgeted revenue in fiscal year 22. Next category is expenses. The overwhelming majority of expenses in the general fund is personnel related. As you know, we budget for full employment the full year, but staffing turnover is going to be natural and a constant. So we know that we're going to have personnel budget savings each year. We just don't know how much. And so this year we're forecasting about $1 million in vacancy savings or expenses under the budgeted amount, and that goes into reserve fund levels. All other, you can see on the two categories on the revenue side, we were within 1.7% variance on all other revenue items and within 1.7 or 0.7% on all non-personnel related expenses in the general fund, but expenses coming in about $800,000 under budget. The transfers to other funds, those were presented to the Finance Committee in March and approved by the Finance Committee and included in the fiscal plan before you this evening for approval. And those are transfers to the Park and Public Land, Housing Trust Fund, Self-Insurance Fund, and Capital Improvement Funds to, again, help support capital and one-time expenses in those funds. Now moving to fiscal year 23, the citywide budget of all funds, as mentioned by Mayor Pro Tem Morris, revenues projected at $99.5 million for fiscal year 23. This provides a general overview of where those revenues fall as far as type of revenues. Our number one revenue source citywide as well as in the general fund is property tax. On a citywide basis, it accounts for 33% of the total projected revenue for fiscal year 23, followed closely by charges and fees. So these are fees charged for specific services and is adjustable based on user demand. Those charges and fees total about 27% of the total revenues. On the expense side, we're forecasting $97.7 million in expenses citywide. This shows expenses by type. You'll note here that personnel accounts for 40.6% of projected citywide expenses. For the city, you see that being made up of the salaries and wages, the pension, and the other employee benefits categories. These are combining for just under 41% of the total expenses. This also looks at citywide expenses a little differently. This shows by function or by department. This is giving you the dollar amount in millions and then representative in the pie chart as a percentage of the total. You can see significant proportion of expenses with public safety, fire and police budgets. You see a capital here of $16.4 million. For total capital expenses citywide, but it just gives you a different visual on how the expenses are allocated across the city's organization. Sometimes confounding aspect of governmental finance is the fund concept. We're required by federal guidelines to account for resources in individual funds. That demonstrates compliance with mandated limitations on certain revenue sources. So we have 30 individual funds that comprise the total citywide budget, and this chart just shows revenues in blue, expenses in red, showing the fiscal year 23 budget by fund to give you an idea of the proportion to the total. So you see the general fund being the significant aspect at 40% of the total city budget. And then you see a few other lines of relevance: Park and Recreation Fund, Capital Improvements Fund, the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, that also make up significant proportions of the total citywide budget. Now drilling down to the general fund. So as we indicated, about 41% of the total citywide expenses. Revenues are projected at $39.7 million for fiscal year 23 in the general fund. Here you see a much greater reliance on property tax revenue. 54% of revenues into the general fund are property tax related. And you see the other components of revenue sources in the general fund. Just under 39.2 anticipated in expenses for the general fund in fiscal year 23. Here you're going to look at a very different perspective on the personnel expenses. So when you look at the salaries and wages, pension, and other employee benefits in the general fund, those total for nearly 3/4 of the general fund budget in expenses. A significant component to the development of the fiscal plan is long-term forecasting. We do long-term forecasting for many of our priority funds, so those funds that had a higher perspective of the total on the previous graph. This is a graph of the general fund forecast. This is net operations before capital and one-time expenses. Again, revenue is represented in blue, expenses in red. The green line here shows the fund balance reserves in the general fund over time, so you can see a few actual years of fiscal year 20 and 21, the current estimate for fiscal year 22, the fiscal year 23 proposed budget, and then the 5-year forecast. We do 5-year forecasting for our more significant funds. As you know, in the general fund, we actually look 10 years at the March workshop. Not represented here because you can imagine years 6 through 10 are not very highly reliable, but it does give us an idea and an ability to be very proactive in our budgetary decisions by looking at the long-term implications of current budgetary decisions. Also of note, as mentioned in Mayor Pro Tem Morris's opening comments, is the extent of the capital projects. So you have here specific projects, significant projects, making up a $14.3 million capital budget. The list on the left side are actual construction projects for fiscal year 23. On the right side, you have 4 significant design initiatives. So the city is budgeting in fiscal year 23 design for these 4 projects, and they would come back with cost estimates and discussion at the November Capital Workshop for construction to be budgeted in the following year. So a few years ago, we separated design and construction, design in the year previous to anticipated construction, so that we had very good, reliable construction estimates as we budgeted the construction for those projects. In addition to this $14.3 million, we have about $2 million in operating capital. So this is recurring maintenance capital initiatives that aren't reflected in the 5-year capital improvement program, but do go towards maintaining the city's capital assets, such as facilities, tree inventory that was mentioned earlier, water mains, those type of things that just require recurring expenses to maintain. Also noteworthy that we have sustainability initiatives of about $200,000 built into some of those projects as enhancements to address sustainability initiatives in those projects. Also adding to the total of $20 million are 2 projects that will carry over from fiscal year 22. Borough Oak Storm Sewer, you considered last City Council meeting, approved that proceeding. That was budgeted in FY22 and will simply be rolled over to FY23. Similarly, a cemetery $1.6 million capital improvement will carry over to 23, bringing that total to $20 million. Service listing. Each year we try to enhance the budget document to make it more user-friendly, more informational. We had previously for years included a core elective service listing in our budget document. It was in the appendix. It listed services provided by each department designated as core elective. We took that up a notch this year, and instead of designating those services as core or elective, we have provided the actual budget impact of those services. So these are snapshots of specific services in different departments. You can see the full list in the budget book. You see the gross expense in the budget for that particular service, any direct revenues associated with that specific service reflected, and then, if applicable, the net cost impact. So we think this is a real nice enhancement to the budget book and fairly easy to read through and understand, and hopefully interesting information to residents. State of Illinois fiscal year 23 budget. We always talk about this because typically the state's fiscal year being 2 months behind us can prove to put a wrench in our budget process early in our fiscal year in a typical year. So we're typically approving our fiscal year budget at the end of April for the May 1 to April 30 fiscal year, and the state is only talking about their budget. Sometimes they go until June or July before they approve their state fiscal year budget of July 1 to June 30th. The great news this year is that the state approved their fiscal year 23 budget on April 9th. They wanted to adjourn early, and so they got the work done on the budget. And so this is really a great green light. Sometimes it's yellow or red, and we're not sure what we're going to end up with. But there are a few impacts to the city of the state's approved fiscal year 23 budget, and they're very, very minor, which is good news. Only a minor increase to income tax allocations. We were hoping for the 8% that was introduced, going from 6% to 8%, but we did budget 6%. So there is no effect on the forecasted income tax revenues in the city's fiscal year 23 budget. There is a suspension of the 1% sales tax on groceries until January for the state's fiscal year, the full fiscal year. However, the state's budget provides for a grocery tax replacement fund. This is intended to make whole the local governments who will lose that sales tax revenue. We don't have any details on how that replacement fund is going to work or how they will offset those revenue collections, but there is an intent in the state's budget to not pass that revenue loss onto municipal budgets. And the state fuel tax was due to increase July 1st with an inflationary adjustment. The state has pressed pause on that and suspended that until January 1st. But we did not budget for the increased motor fuel tax. So would have been only minor to the city's budget. So we just forecasted it on our current levels. So good news, no impact of the state's budget on the city. So in closing, the recommendation this evening from staff is that you approve the fiscal year 23 comprehensive fiscal plan. Again, thank you so much for your involvement and commitment over the last 7 months, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Thank you. We'll open up for questions. Alderman Bushman?
As usual, thank you for the very comprehensive and informative presentation by you and your staff. You mentioned that the proposals were posted on the website inviting public comment. I was wondering whether you did receive any noteworthy public comment to the proposed financial plan.
I did not receive any feedback, calls, or inquiries from residents.
I'll ask you a question then. Could you go to that variance slide? And on the left side where we see the revenue and the first four items, and you did talk about, the local government distribution fund and what that is, and it's a slight increase from the 6%. But if you look at the first four items on the variance and the amount of variance we had or expect to realize in FY22, if the income stream on those four items remain constant, would that influence the amount of revenue projected for FY23?
Yes, it would. So we have not budgeted for any of these variances to continue at this level. I will say that one departure we've made in the FY23 budget is that for the last few years, we have conservatively budgeted a reduction of income tax. So you may recall that they did not share with municipalities the increase in the income tax rates. They adjusted the formula so that municipal governments continued to receive the same amounts. For 2 years, they took further reductions in those collections at 90% and 95%, as I recall, and we continued to budget that the last few years, although the state has been allocating the full 6%. And so in fiscal year 23, we are budgeting the full 6%, which was a little bit of an increase in income tax, but all indications are that income tax will reset and eventually move back to pre-COVID levels. And so that aspect, that $1 million variance, is not anticipated to occur in 23.
Well, that goes to that earlier question that you answered in terms of what's behind the income tax, and there's a 30% jump that we saw in the flash. If it's and you said it's attributable now more to the corporate setting, Why would we not expect that to continue in the fiscal year '23?
So we use Illinois Municipal League and State of Illinois forecasting. They do not believe that the corporate income tax receipts are sustainable, especially with inflationary increases, increasing interest rates, and global issues such as the Russia-Ukraine war. And so the sense is that corporate income tax will return to pre-COVID levels. The other item I would just note to Alderman Bushman's question is building permits. The other areas where community development and finance have worked, and we have increased our forecasted building permits just based on ongoing historical experience, but not to this level. So we've still looked solely at, planned or recurring development, not anticipating any significant projects. And so that could potentially be a positive budget variance going forward, but probably smaller.
And in building permits, is it more the quantity of building permits or what I'll call the quality, the size of building permits where you have a major construction that would generate a larger building permit fee? That would be more where you'd see that sort of variance.
Your sense is the quantity?
I'd actually say the latter.
Okay.
As you've often said, a single large project can give us a pleasant bump.
Gives you more work, though.
Alderman Preschlack.
Yeah, I just really appreciate the conservative principles you use for forecasting. So it's really great that these one-time variances are with us, but we can't bank on them moving forward. And so, since I've been here in 2018, it's just been such a consistently conservative and thoughtful process that's just, secure on the revenues that we can expect on the low end. So there's upside surprises like this. And then we plan accordingly into the next year. On the flip side, on the expense side, I had a question on the personnel expense. On the underhire, I'm kind of curious if that was concentrated in one or two departments, or is that kind of hires across the board, if they were seasonal? And are we playing catch up to try to, because people are the lifeblood of our city, and you all just do an amazing job running our city, and I think you're totally underappreciated by the average citizen. And since the financial crisis, we really haven't gotten, back to full hiring, if you will, pre-financial crisis. And the technology plan is helping us being more efficient in things. But I'm just kind of curious about that variance, and if the hiring plans are going to close the gap, and in what departments. And sorry if that's too detailed a question.
No, not at all. And I don't think that there's any single department that saw unusual turnover. I would note that we're fairly conservative in budgeting our police and fire overtime, because we realize if we have turnover in police and fire, we're likely going to backfill that with overtime just to meet staffing requirements. And so we tend to see any savings in salaries in police and fire be chewed up by overtime being over budget. So it's usually non-public safety. We did have a presentation from Human Resources Director Amber Campbell on the challenges with seasonal maintenance workers. And so we did experience savings both in the general fund and the Parks and Recreation Fund with our struggle to hire seasonal maintenance workers who are so important to our summer, fall, spring activities. And so we think that the changes in the hourly rates that you've approved will help that. But other than that, I think it's just been generally spread across departments.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have just, how do you think the city might benefit from 2 significant new restaurants opening up, and potentially 4 or 5, over the course of the next 6 to 9 months?
That would be a very positive impact on the sales tax. I would note, specific to Le Colonial, we did forecast the additional revenues for Le Colonial because of the incentive, the rebate sharing agreement with them. So we've budgeted both a forecasted revenue and conversely an expense to meet those obligations with a proposed opening of July. But the other revenues have not been anticipated in the budget, so they would generate a positive variance.
Thank you.
Alderman Romo?
Well, I just have a specific question. I don't know if you can answer it, or maybe Mike Thomas, but I was driving down 60 the other day, and I think the Route 60 bike path was one of the capital improvement projects, and I just didn't see much going on there. Is that
I
moving
think that's coming
forward?
in
or-
May? May?
Yes, so the RFP for Phase 2 design, Public Works Committee is going to be reviewing it tomorrow afternoon. We'll bring it to council May 2nd, and we'll start design.
Great, thank you.
We also have grant dollars for construction, but we've got that whole grant process we've got to go through with the state. That whole thing takes time, so patience.
Thank you.
Other question? Director, can you go back to your very first slide, the 4 quadrants? If you can throw that up there. I just wanted to make a comment that how unusual it is for a city council to have the benefit of this kind of financial planning in depth. We are very fortunate to have the team that can go through all of these components to derive the budget and come out with a budget that is so well done. And I just want to thank you for
Thank you.
developing this strategy and developing this approach to budgeting. So,
Yeah, but some of this is because of the new software, right, that we purchased. Has that helped?
Well, it helps us, it's certainly made us more efficient at it, certainly. The BSNA ERP software has been fantastic to reporting and focusing, but a few years ago, we made an effort to link the various components of the comprehensive fiscal plan and create this cyclical approach so that each aspect was leading into the next, and to bring them more closely aligned and focused.
Yeah, well, that was a huge improvement, and that was on your recommendation as well. And I think everybody's really benefiting. This is very understandable, so thank you.
yeah, very rare for us to have the benefit of, as a city council, of this capability and execution, so. But don't go away, because we're gonna need to vote on the approval. So I need a motion to approve the comprehensive plan for fiscal '23.
So moved.
Second?
We need a voice vote.
Roll call. Alderman Morris?
Aye?
Alderman Karas?
Aye.
Alderman Rommel?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gashagarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Very good, thank you. We're gonna continue with Director Holub on the annual vendor approval list.
Thank you very much. In conjunction with the comprehensive fiscal plan each year, we bring to the city council approval of a list of vendors. These are vendors who provide services throughout the year that accumulate to more than $25,000 in a fiscal year. They are ones that aren't well-suited to our purchasing policy or selection of competitive quotes or review of competitive quotes. So we provide that detailed list. It was included in your packet on page 18. I would note that all of the vendors proposed for fiscal year '23 were included on the approval list of fiscal year '22. So there are no new vendors introduced for approval through this process, although some amounts have been adjusted based on just natural increase in use of those vendors. Examples are utility services and legal services and contributions to the Intergovernmental Risk Management Agency, to which the city is a member. So again, I'll answer any questions if you have any on the vendor list.
Questions for our list? Entertain a motion to approve the list.
So moved.
Seconded.
Votes, roll call vote.
Alderman Morris?
Aye?
Alderman Karas?
Aye.
Alderman Rommel?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gashagarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. And we have one more item for Director Holub, which is the consideration of an ordinance making a supplemental appropriation for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2021 and ending April 30th, 2022. It's first reading and if desired by the city council, final approval, which is what I think we're going to do. wanna
Thank
comment?
you. Again, as part of the fiscal year '23 budget development process, you saw that we do year-end estimates for fiscal year '22. We asked departments to estimate the actual revenues and expenses that are going to come in, finance reviews, salaries and benefits for the year, and makes estimates to see where we're going to have savings or overages and be able to plan for those. In the event a single fund exceeds the annual appropriation allotment for the fiscal year, we need to return to you for a supplemental appropriation ordinance. There is one fund this year in fiscal year 22 anticipated to need a supplemental appropriation. It's the Motor Fuel Tax Fund. And it's related to an action taken to design services on the Waukegan and Everett intersection improvement project. Last summer, the council approved an expansion of the scope of design for that intersection, both to the base design as well as the addition of a westbound right-hand turn lane, and to analyze that and see what those cost implications would be. So at the time we approved that, we anticipated that there might be the need for a supplemental appropriation ordinance. There is indeed a need. And so this appropriation ordinance adds $150,000 to the Motor Fuel Tax Fund FY22 appropriation to cover those additional costs. So if you approve, you can waive first reading and approve final approval of the supplemental appropriation ordinance this evening.
Any questions? Alderman Bushman? We're good to go. All right. Well, I appreciate a motion to waive first reading and grant final approval of the ordinance making a supplemental appropriation for the fiscal year beginning May 1st, 2021 and ending April 30th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Karas?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gushkarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Very good. Through the meat of the meeting, but we'll come up with the items for omnibus vote consideration. So I'll read these 7 items. If there's any item that you would like to have removed from the omnibus and taken separately, you can let me know at the conclusion of the listing. So item number 1 is approval of the April 4th, 2022 City Council meeting minutes. Item 2 is consideration of a request to waive the fidelity bond requirement in connection with the Women's Board of Northwestern Lake Forest Hospital holding a raffle in the city of Lake Forest. Approval of, number 3, approval of 12-month renewal agreement with XO Communications for the SIP telecommunications services at an estimated expense of $30,500. Number 4, award a 1-year professional service agreement for city engineering services to Gaywalt, I think it's pronounced Hamilton Associates, to include authority to provide permit reviews when the full cost is reimbursable by the developer or a property owner, and authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with 2 additional 1-year optional renewals. Number 5, award proposal from Northern Divers USA to purchase and install 3 new pumps for the Spruce and Sheridan Road Sanitary Sewer Lift Station for the sum of $94,725 plus a 5% contingency of $4,750 for a total price of $99,475. The 6th item is consideration of a request from the School of St. Mary's for a waiver of city fees assessed to support an upcoming special event. And the last item is consideration of a recommendation from the Plan Commission in support of a special use permit for Duffers, a new restaurant, as we talked, proposed in the Westward Center, 950 Northwestern. Anyone want to take anything separately? If not, entertain a motion to approve the omnibus agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Seconded.
Voice, roll call vote. City Clerk?
Alderman Morris?
Aye?
Alderman Karas?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Notes?
Aye.
Alderman Preschlack?
Aye.
Alderman Gushkarian?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
Alderman Weber?
Aye.
8 yeas, 0 nay, motion carries.
Very good. We're at the end. I don't see any old business on our agenda, and I don't see any new business, but there is an opportunity for members of the city council to bring up other items, so we have a couple. Alderman Rummel?
Oh, did someone else have something?
Alderman Preschlack does.
It's Earth Month, and I just wanted to highlight some of the activities for Earth Month. Some of them have already taken place, and I want to give a shout out to both Layla and Mike Strong for helping to coordinate all of these wonderful activities that we've had going on this month. So first of all, we had a beach cleanup event that took place on April 19th. We had about 20 participants, which is the maximum that we could have. And what's delightful about these events is when they start to occur at the beach, residents join in, which is, ideal. That's really what you want out of these events. So, it's a nice way to see what happens and how much plastic there is that comes up on shore in our own Great Lakes. We think about it in the oceans often, but it's a problem here too. And if you participated in any of these, it really highlights it. And if you missed that one, there is another one tomorrow, April 19th. Registration is still available on the city's website. The event begins at 10 a.m. and you meet at the North Pavilion. Again, the limit is 20, and there are still a few opportunities available. So I encourage residents to get out there and bring your children. It's a great learning experience also. In addition to both of the beach cleanup events, the city has coordinated with DART to host a foam recycling event at the Municipal Services Center on Saturday, April 16th. They already are doing that, and DART has confirmed that they're willing to conduct similar events with the city in the future. So this is really our first event to recycle foam and styrofoam. So, hopefully they'll be doing that again. It was a successful event. And then coming up, sort of in coordination with Arbor Day, is our Tree Hugger Scavenger event from April 22nd to the 29th. 8 special trees in Lake Forest parks have been identified by the city staff, and you do this Earth Day, which is April 22nd, from April 22nd to Arbor Day, April 29th. So beginning on Friday, April 22nd, look for the Tree Hugger Fun Fact sign that will be next to a special tree in 8 community parks. Snap a picture next to each tree sign and email your picture to the Lake Forest Rec Department, and you will be entered in a raffle. The clues will be published on the Lake Forest Parks and Rec website on Friday, April 22nd, beginning at 10 a.m. The raffle prize is a beautiful tree to plant in your yard with a value of $200 and a gift certificate to Pasquazi's Garden Center, and we thank them for that also. So it's a wonderful activity for young children to get out to our parks and participate in a scavenger hunt. They're always a lot of fun. And in addition to the tree finder that we have on the website, so it's been just a great month for accenting the environment and sustainability. So hopefully residents will participate. So thank you for the opportunity. Again, thank you for staff.
Great. If I could add one more, our library has a book discussion with Green Minds as part of Earth Month, and another great opportunity for the folks to have an interaction on this important month, important week, and obviously the 22nd being Earth Day.
Right, textile recycling, and we can again emphasize that we have a textile recycling bin, which is a recent addition out at the compost center and has been very well used. So we're making strides in all areas.
Very good. Alderman Preschlack.
Well, I got an email from Mike Strong today saying, with mixed emotions, that, to congratulate, and so Layla Warner of her service with the city, and unfortunately she's leaving us on April 22nd. And I've really enjoyed working with you on a bunch of different capacities, and you've added a ton of value. And I wish I could have tried to keep you somehow with the negotiation here, but it's probably too late. But you've been amazing, and all of our staff's been great. But just wanted to say thank you so much for the 3 years of hard work and just all the things that you've done for the Environmental Sustainability Committee and the co-op and all the other things in Public Works. It's really a special place to work, and you just made it great. And I hope you always think fondly of your start in your career here, and maybe someday, you'll think about coming back. So, but thank you so much.
It's Arlington
Well
Heights
done.
gain.
That's a success at Arlington Heights.
Chairman Morris, I just
yes.
had one other comment. You may have heard that the St. Mary's is having their 5K run, 1 mile walk on Saturday. The weather is looking good, dry and mild, so if anyone would like to join me out there for the 5K run, I will be doing that, my first one since Alderman Karras and I ran on Lake Forest Day.
Oh,
So it
very
should be a
good.
good morning.
All right. Well, all right, those are all great points. Very productive session tonight. Thanks to the staff and the finance department. Thank you very much. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And thank you to our Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes. Right. Well, didn't hear any negatives, so we are adjourned.